Hello everyone, my name is Me Khant. I use the pen name PamarNi for my poetry. I'm a Burmese poet currently based in San Francisco Bay Area. I am doing my master's here at Stanford University. I'm really honored to be participating in Harvard Asia Center's poetry reading event on poetry against tyranny and in conversation about the resistant poetry coming out of Burma. I started writing poetry when I was in university. And the main reason really is that I was seeing a lot of the problems in my own university and in the education system around me. And I needed an outlet to express. And I just kind of found poetry as a very natural way of expressing myself. And so I started writing and sent to some of the local outlets, and I had a lot of friends who encouraged me, and I had also my family who encouraged me. So that's kind of how I started my poetry writing journey. Personally, as a person, I grew up really loving poetry since I was really young. I come from a family of writers, and both my grandfather and my mother are both writers. So I grew up with a lot of books, and I think one of the most transformative book that I read that made me got into poetry was this historical fiction about that was set in the last dynasty of Burma. And one of the main characters in there is a very famous royal poet. And I was struck by the last poem that he wrote before he died, before he was executed. So he was executed. And since then, because it was at the time I was reading this up when I was really young, I couldn't necessarily understand the entirety of the poem. It was also a very classic traditional poem. So there were a lot of words that I didn't know, but it was just the way it was written. It was so beautiful that it really struck me to explore more of similar things to read and similar poems. And that's kind of how I started getting into poetry when I was young. And there were a lot of children poems that my mom, one of the most famous Burmese poets, wrote that I really fall in love with. So I started to read a lot of his poems. And then later on, I found more poetry readings from many both traditional and then free verse modern poets. And so that's kind of how I started a journey, and then got into writing and reading more and more poetry. And now it's a big part of me and my identity as a person. So, even currently, especially when, there are a lot of the things that are happening at home, and also, the life that I'm living in here, there are a lot of contradictions in between, and poetry is something that weave different parts of me into kind of an avenue for me to reconcile these different parts of me. So this is just kind of a little bit about me and why I am into poetry and why I really love writing and reading poems.